He had a PhD in physics from MIT and could have worked anywhere. Instead, James Miller chose to teach night classes at a community college for barely minimum wage. When students learned why he made that choice and what he did every day to make it financially possible, they realized they were being taught by someone who believed in their potential more than his own comfort. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning in Professor James Miller's inbox at Riverside Community College. It was from Maria Santos, one of his physics students, asking if she could meet him for coffee to discuss graduate school applications. She suggested Thursday at 2 p.m. at the campus cafe. James stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back politely that he wouldn't be available during the day, but could meet after his evening class. Maria found this odd. Most professors kept regular office hours, but she agreed to the later meeting. What Maria didn't know was that at 2 p.m. on Thursday, Professor Miller would be operating a concrete mixer at a residential construction site 40 minutes away, wearing a hard hat instead of his usual button-down shirt, earning the money that allowed him to teach her advanced physics for $2,400 a semester. James Miller had what most people would consider an unusual career trajectory. After earning his PhD from MIT at age 26, he'd worked for 3 years at a prestigious research lab in Boston, publishing papers and earning a salary that most educators could only dream of. But something was missing. "I felt like I was solving problems that only other physicists would ever care about," James would later tell his students. "I wanted to solve problems that mattered to real people." So he left Boston, moved back to his hometown in Arizona, and took a job teaching night classes at Riverside Community College. The pay was terrible. Adjunct instructors at community colleges earn about $3,000 per course, with no benefits and no job security. For someone with James's qualifications, it was financial suicide. But James had a theory about education that he wanted to test in practice rather than just papers. "Most of these students have been told their whole lives that they're not smart enough for science," James explained to the James had some experience with construction from summer jobs during college, and the timing worked perfectly. Construction crews started early and finished by mid-afternoon, leaving him time to prepare for his evening classes. The physical work was actually a welcome contrast to the mental demands of teaching, and the steady paycheck made it possible to continue doing what he loved. But James kept his two worlds completely separate. At the construction site, he was just another guy with strong hands and a reliable work ethic. At the college, he was Professor Miller, focused entirely on helping his students discover they were capable of more than they'd ever imagined. Maria Santos was one of those students. She'd enrolled in James's Physics 101 class, expecting to struggle through a required science credit and move on with her business degree. Instead, she found herself fascinated by James's teaching style. Unlike other professors who lectured from textbooks, James explained physics through real-world examples that made perfect sense. When teaching about structural forces, he'd describe how weight distribution worked in building construction with a precision that suggested personal experience. When explaining thermodynamics, he'd reference the behavior of concrete as it cured, details no textbook would include. He didn't just know physics, Maria later said. He knew how physics worked in the real world. James's students began to notice other things. His hands bore the calluses and small scars of someone who worked with tools regularly. He wore sturdy boots that looked more construction site than academic. His explanations of mechanical advantage came with the specificity of someone who'd actually operated pulleys and levers under pressure. Most telling of all, Professor Miller seemed to understand the struggles of working-class students in a way that most academics didn't. When single mothers worried about missing class for sick children, he helped them catch up without judgment. When students working multiple jobs fell behind on assignments, he found ways to help them succeed rather than fail. "Professor Miller got it," said David Chen, another student. "He understood what it was like to work all day and still try to learn at night." The discovery happened by accident. Maria had been struggling with a particularly challenging problem set and decided instead she found a residential construction site. Maria sat in her car, confused, double-checking the address. Then she saw him, Professor Miller, wearing a hard hat and work boots, guiding a concrete truck into position with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this hundreds of times. She watched for 20 minutes, mesmerized. This was her physics professor, the man who'd spent the previous evening explaining quantum mechanics, now calculating load distributions for a foundation pour with the same precision he brought to teaching. When James looked up and saw Maria's car, their eyes met through the windshield. For a moment, both were frozen, student and teacher caught in a reality that neither had expected to share. James walked over to her car, still wearing his hard hat, his boots covered in concrete dust. "Hi, Maria," he said simply. "I guess you found my day job." Maria rolled down her window, too shocked to speak immediately. Finally, she managed, "Professor Miller, what are you doing here?" James looked back at the construction site, where his coworkers were waiting for him to return. "The same thing I do at night, solving problems, just different kinds of problems." That evening, after James's usual physics class, Maria stayed behind. The classroom emptied except for the two of them, and she had questions that went beyond homework. "How long have you been doing construction work?" she asked. 4 years, since I started teaching here." "But you have a PhD from MIT. You could work anywhere." James smiled. "I do work where I want to work, here." Maria struggled to understand. "But the pay, you could make 10 times more somewhere else." "Money isn't why I teach, Maria. I teach because I think education can change lives. Your life specifically." James explained his philosophy to Maria that night, the same philosophy that had driven him to leave his prestigious research position and take on physically demanding work to afford teaching community college students. "Most people think community college students aren't as capable as university students," James said. "I think that's completely wrong. I think they're often more motivated, more determined, and more appreciative of education because they've had to fight for it." He gestured around the modest classroom with its aging equipment and fluorescent lighting. "These students work full-time jobs, support families, overcome obstacles that university students never face. They don't need easier classes. They need professors who believe in their potential." Maria was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "Is that why you work construction? To afford to teach here?" "I work construction." James's secret couldn't stay hidden long. Maria, deeply moved by what she'd discovered, shared the story with other students. Within a week, everyone in James's classes knew that their professor spent his days doing manual labor to afford teaching them at night. The response was immediate and powerful. Students who had been coasting through the class suddenly took it seriously. Attendance improved dramatically. Study groups formed spontaneously. Students began asking more questions, working harder on assignments, and pushing themselves to understand concepts they'd previously dismissed as too difficult. "If Professor Miller is willing to work construction to teach us," said David Chen, "the least we can do is work hard to learn." But the students wanted to do more than just work harder. They wanted to help. A group of students approached the dean with a proposal. They had researched adjunct instructor pay scales and discovered that James was earning significantly less than professors at nearby schools. They requested that the college review his salary and teaching load. Other students started a petition asking the college to offer James a full-time position with benefits. Within 2 weeks, they had collected over 500 signatures from students, faculty, and community members. The local newspaper picked up the story after Maria wrote a letter to the editor describing her professor's dedication. The headline read, "MIT graduate chooses construction work to afford teaching community college students. The article caught the attention of several four-year universities, who immediately began recruiting James with offers of significantly higher salaries and better working conditions. James turned them all down. These job offers missed the point entirely, he told the reporter who asked about the recruitment attempts. "I'm not here because I couldn't get a better job. I'm here because this is the job I want." The attention did lead to positive changes at Riverside Community College. The administration, somewhat embarrassed by the publicity about adjunct pay, offered James a full-time position with benefits and a salary increase that would eliminate his need for construction work. James accepted the position, but surprised everyone by announcing he would continue working construction 2 days a week. "The physical work keeps me grounded," he explained. "It reminds me what most of my students' lives are like. Plus, I genuinely enjoy building things." But James did make one change to his routine. He started incorporating his construction experiences more openly into his teaching, bringing real-world applications directly into the classroom. Students loved the approach. Physics concepts that had seemed abstract suddenly made perfect sense when James explained them through construction examples he'd encountered that very day. Maria Santos, the student whose afternoon visit had started everything, went on to transfer to Arizona State University with a full scholarship, majoring in engineering. She credits James with showing her that she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. "Before his class, I thought physics was for smart people, and I wasn't one of them," Maria said. "Professor Miller taught me that I was wrong about both physics and myself." David Chen changed his major to applied physics and is now working on a master's degree. "Professor Miller showed me that science isn't about being naturally brilliant," David explained. "It's about being willing to work hard and think carefully. Those are skills anyone can develop." James Miller still teaches at Riverside Community College. His classes remain popular, with waiting lists each semester. Students know they're not just getting a physics education, they're learning from someone who has chosen to invest his life in their potential. The construction crew at Hartwell Development still calls him Jimmy, and he still shows up 2 days a week. Hard hat and work boots replacing the button-down shirts and slacks he wears in the classroom. His coworkers now know about his teaching job, and they've started calling him Professor Jimmy, a title James wears with pride. But perhaps the most significant change is in how James talks about his career choice. He no longer sees himself as someone who left a prestigious position to teach community college. He sees himself as someone who found the perfect job and was willing to do whatever it took to afford it. Success isn't about maximizing your salary or impressing your peers, James tells his students now. Success is about using your talents in service of something you believe in. "I believe in education, and I believe in every student who walks through that door." The story of Professor Miller working construction to afford teaching has inspired other educators facing similar financial challenges. A support network has developed among adjunct instructors who work multiple jobs, sharing strategies and encouragement. Several construction companies in the area now specifically recruit teachers during summer months, understanding that educators bring valuable skills to physical work: problem-solving, precision, and the ability to work well with others. Most importantly, James's story has changed how many people think about community colleges and the students who attend them. His example demonstrates that excellence in education isn't about the prestige of the institution, it's about the dedication of the instructors and the potential of the students. Today, when people ask James Miller why he chose community college teaching over research or university positions, his answer is simple: because this is where I can make the biggest difference. And dying. James years ago, in the classroom. Rich James have explained and done. Students over prestige, the impact of a preachier bouter. In sense of one, we are never supposed to get more. The branch change your jobs from somehow simple tribute disciplinities on more, when love that agency, impress the driving a stopped and the center signs, the for more easy, that the decent, to support easy watching as official fares. Easy deserved to be recognized and celebrated. And, well, you want to take a bastaply that easy deserved to be supportunity. And sometimes, when people who make it possible subscribe to help us share more stories about hidden heroes in our communities. Hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to remember the power of believing in people's potential.